In high school and college, I had a lot of female friends, but the problem was that I always wanted more from them. I didn't think I needed more friends. I wanted a romantic relationship. But I was wrong. This attitude not only devalued friendship, but devalued the women in my life. Now, years later as a married man, it feels like I'm not allowed to connect with other women, to be excited about a female friendship. But that's simply not true. Blessed with a new friend in my life, I want to do things right this time. I want to lead with honesty. I'm Andy Green, and this is the Naked Man Podcast. Today's guest is Kat Pettibone, a writer, podcaster, punk rock loving TV obsessive, and my new friend. If there's a place I struggle most with being honest, it's on social media. I tend to be cynical and cycle through negative shaming thoughts about how nobody cares and nobody actually wants to know the real me. Kat exemplifies the opposite mindset. She displays honesty, bravery, and wears her heart on her sleeve in everything she posts, and that's why I admire her. As she told me in our emails leading up to this, she shares her experiences and not just the successes, but the failures, her flaws, fears, and shortcomings to help people feel less alone. That's the goal of this podcast. Hell, that's the goal of art. Kat and I met on Twitter and bonded over our shared worship of Pacey Witter of Dawson's Creek fame. She wants to marry Pacey, and I want to be Pacey, or marry him, which provides for an interesting dynamic that we're going to speak to. This week, we're discussing opposite-sex friendships and why they can be so damn hard and confusing, using our fledgling friendship as an example. Kat feels like the friend in high school I needed but didn't have, and I'm so grateful to have met her now because in too many ways, I'm still that guy from high school. I just hope I can prove to be a friend that she needs too. Kat Pettibone, welcome to the Naked Man Podcast.
Hello. Oh my gosh, that was the nicest intro I think anyone will ever give me in my life. Thank you so much.
Oh no, you have many more intros to come, but
you made me sound so cool.
that's my job.
I love it.
And this is the only part that I can actually control. Like I can write that. Now we're off book. Now it's
No, that's great. Everybody listen to that. That's who I am.
There we go. Yeah. All the stuff that you say from now on.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will only color that in.
I hope so.
Well, so I want to try and start from a very basic, how are you every week on the show? Just to, because I'm curious. I don't like the banal, like, how are you good? And then we move on. That's how we live our lives. So Kat, how are you in this moment?
Yeah. Isn't it weird how we're like structurally programmed to ask people how they are? And then we're also programmed to always say good, even if like it's the worst day of our life, like something terrible's happened. We're like, I'm great. It's so great. But I'm genuinely pretty good. Like things are really going very well for me right now, all things considered. So I'm good. And I don't have much more than that, honestly.
I won't probe. Pretty good. So how do we get to great? No, I'm kidding.
No, it's okay. I think the only thing I'm struggling with right now, and this is like such like a champagne problem, first world, but like I'm starting to get that haven't been able to travel itch, like that many people have had this past year, but I've actually been kind of good with it. I'm like, it's fine, whatever. And now I'm kind of like, okay, I got to like get out somewhere. I think it's because my birthday is coming up and I'm like, I want to travel. I want to see people. I want to do things. So I'm starting to get that itch. But other than that, I'm good. So not really anything that's an actual problem.
Well, but I mean, it's an understandable one and everyone's there. And like, this will be probably birthday number 2, right? Where you've been sort of stuck.
Will.
Yeah.
Yeah. The quarantine life, or sort of quasi quarantine at this point, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, at least, I mean, my life hasn't changed yet, but I mean, when this is dropped, hopefully we can both be traveling at that point.
I would love that for us.
I feel like for me, where I'm at, I was walking, like getting a nervous walk in before this. And there was a father and her daughter practicing roller skating in the park. And she was about to start going backwards. And I think the dad, I didn't exactly catch what he asked, but he's like, I think it was sort of like, how are you? And she just said, I'm excited. Well, not exactly excited. I'm like I'm scared, so it's like she combined excited and scared. I thought, I think that just is me at all times, you know, like I'm
love
excited.
that. Yeah. Like at a constant state of being excited and scared at once.
But now,
that.
but now that we're here, I'm more excited than scared.
Me too.
And so, yeah, we're going to talk about, us because we are the thesis of this, the male female friendship. And we're both new at this friendship rather. I think I might be new at male female friendships too, upon reflection, in an embarrassing way. But I just sort of wanted to ask you, like, when I brought this up, I mean, you said that you connected with it, obviously. And I was just wondering, I mean, what was your sort of immediate reaction? Like, or have you had problems, I guess, or how are your male female friendships, or do you even have any?
I feel like when you brought this up for me, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm the perfect person for this, just because I have had every sort of experience. Like I've had some really successful, like male, female, solely platonic. I've had things where like you're friends with an ex or you're not friends with an ex. We've been friends and then we've started dating. I've just everything, like, or we've been friends and then they fell for me, or the opposite way. And like, I've had the whole rainbow of all these things throughout my life. And I have had a ton of guy friends. And I don't mean that in like that really annoying way where girls are like, I'm only friends with guys because like it's easier to be friends with just guys. Like, no, girlfriends are so important for women. But I have had like a lot of guy friends in my life. So I've had the experience.
You have the Mad Libs of friendship there.
Exactly.
Like the sort of, I think sometimes the problem with the like, oh, I'm only friends with guys, or I have so many guy friends. It's sort of like that girl is being the cool girl too, and sort of neutering herself for basically to sort of, I guess, belong with men, or just to hope that maybe they see her as more than just the cool girl, right?
I think that's 100% what it is. Like, oh, they'll relate to me and then maybe they'll like me more, or I don't know, or like, it's just, I guess as women, again, we're just conditioned when we're younger to kind of be pitted against each other instead of kind of lifting each other up. And it takes like life experience to realize like you, as a woman, you need other strong women around you to help you. So I think that's part of it as well. You kind of have to go through that learning process. I did, at least, but yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I think every person needs a support network, right? But yeah, it does seem to be more of a competition. But I mean, I think with men, it's sort of like the boys club thing, but also our friendships are really just giving each other shit all the time. You know, it seems like this sort of superficial thing, and we have to get drunk first to get to the real stuff, or drugs. I remember doing had a Molly night with he was my best friend. And we had to we did this more than once to we took Molly and went to a bar and just the two of us would talk all night. It was great, but it was like, we had to take Molly to do that
in order to open up. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, maybe that's why men and women need to be friends more, because I don't know, we'll teach each other, how to open up in different ways.
I mean, I agree. That's why we're here.
I'm here.
Yeah. Well, and that even sounds like point. Well, that even sounds like I'm bringing you here to help me. And I went through that multiple times during this. I'm like, am I just using Kat to get out my shame and guilt about things?
That's okay.
That's okay. I mean, I guess that shows already I'm not used to a friend that would be down for that, right?
Open to that and listening to that and being like, okay, let's talk that through.
There was one other thing that you said that it made me think of, basically hanging out with all the guys. My wife has actually mentioned to me hey, I'm not a guy. Don't even though we're married now, it feels like I can just say anything. She still has to remind me hey, I don't want to talk about, stereotypical guy thing, your gas or whatever it is that we're talking about in this moment. And I'm just oh, you don't want to know everything? Okay.
Oh, my bad. I'm not married, so I don't really know how that works. Do you not tell? I guess, yeah. Well, I wouldn't want to hear about that either.
Right, exactly. It's just sometimes you just don't want to hear about it. And she's just yeah. And that makes sense. Totally.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So I wanted to, I guess, let's go down that sort of rainbow. Let's start on like, okay, Roy G.
Okay.
Biv, like where you said that you've had friends that started as friends and then went to relationships, and then I guess vice versa. Or you mentioned that there was like, sometimes that you fell for the other person and then the other guy fell for you, and not necessarily in the same scenario. So maybe let's start with those two.
Yeah.
I'm just like curious. Yeah. If you could tell the story.
Yeah. There have been a couple different experiences in my life. I guess like the most predominant one is someone who I met through a job I was working, and he had pretty long-term girlfriend at the time. And we became really good friends, like very, very good friends for a while. And I guess he felt like he really couldn't talk to her about specific things. So he would open up to me, and there was just something there. And I ended up sort of falling for him. But at this point, I was like in my early 20s. So I was old enough to know like how to behave myself. It wasn't like a thing where I was out to get him, but I definitely developed feelings for this person. And yeah, I just kind of, I don't want to say bided my time because it sounds really like maniacal, but I just was a friend for him. And eventually he had feelings for me too. And it worked out where we ended up together, and we were together for like 4 or 5 years. We got engaged. He passed away. That's a whole different podcast, but yeah, so yeah, that was one experience where I fell for him. And I mean, it wasn't easy. There was a lot of drama and pain in that, but his friendship was worth it to me. So like it was worth the ride, I guess. And it would have been worth it even if we hadn't ended up in a relationship. And then the opposite end.
Actually, let's stop on that one for a second.
Yeah, please.
Well, I mean, I think like what you just said was sort of like, oh, it was worth it regardless. That's, I think, the loop that I never sort of was able to do. I was like, oh, okay, like I'm in it for the friendship. I'm going to bide my time. Normally, I don't think I was in relationships where they were like, it wasn't necessarily like they were in long-term relationships. That I think would make it easier for me to know like, okay, but it was sort of like well, I guess my question was, did you ever say that you had these feelings for him when he was still in the relationship, or was it, I mean, I imagine it was kind of obvious in a certain way, but
yeah, I think it was kind of an unspoken thing where it kind of became obvious, but I think it was, I was feeling things and he was feeling things, but I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to be that person. You know what I mean? And so I kind of had to wait until he sort of started to, profess his feelings. And even when he did that, I was like, listen, you're in a relationship and I'm, one, not going to be that girl, and two, it's not fair to the person that you're still with. So that's something that you have to figure out, and then we can take the next step. But until then, I'm not going to do this like in between thing. Like we're friends and that's great, but it can't be this like weird in between situation. And in that case, it ended up, it was real and we ended up being together, and we should have been together, and they weren't right for each other anyway. And that's fine. But it was still a little messy. It always is. But yeah.
You sound so evolved.
Oh God. I'm not.
I was like, you're worrying about what you're going to say. And I'm like, no, like, I feel like everyone's just going to be very impressed with how you handled that scenario.
Oh, I have not always handled scenarios well. Trust me. It was like a lot of trial and error, but yeah, that was one time where I was the one that was kind of pining away for a friend.
But like, it doesn't sound like it sort of affected your friendship, right? Like, because you were there regardless. And if he had even said like, Kat, I'm not interested in you, you wouldn't have been like, oh, well, fuck you.
Absolutely not. No, I was so there for him, like no matter what. Even when in the beginning, when he was like coming to me about his girlfriend and things like that, it was just something that I just was there for. I was there to like be his friend and talk it out with him. And it wasn't like I was trying to sabotage, where if they were in a fight and he was venting to me, I was like, well, you should just leave her and blah, 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 ha 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 kind of thing. I didn't have,
she sucks. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like get rid of her. No, I was always just trying to be like, well, talk to her this way, try this, and the thing is we became so close that I think it definitely bothered her, because I think that's something in those kind of scenarios you have to think about. And she ended up seeing his phone bill, and we spoke like every day, every night kind of thing. So that really bothered her. But I really did try and handle it the best possible way that I could. But you can't help how you feel, I guess, when you fall
Right.
for
Well, I mean,
someone
because
you don't
obviously
also-
from her perspective, I don't blame her. And I think the red flag sort of in that scenario, not that I guess we're turning into like a Dear Abby or something, but like, but it's sort of like, if you're going to someone else outside of your relationship to like vent or whatever, and it's a secret or something like that, then that's the sort of like, oh, you know, and I think we're going to talk about this, but like, that was where you know, when we met, I was very upfront with Lily because I was just like, you know, because that's just what you do. And it would sort of feed into like something else. Like it feels like I'm cheating or something if I'm like having a conversation about our, you know, love life, which we haven't had. So I'm glad.
This is the first time we've really delved into it. But yeah, but I looking back, I think that's true. And if there was one mistake I made, I think it's going along with like, because we worked together, we worked in a restaurant together, and she didn't work with us, but she would come in a lot to see him or whatever it is. And we would have to kind of downplay our friendship. And I think going along with that was probably like my one bad move in that. I should have said something sooner, like, okay, if we're going to be friends, like, then she needs to know that we're friends. Like, we can't just be pretending we barely talk when we're like talking every day. And I think that was like the issue, you know, like, because emotional cheating is not okay either, you know, even though it was unsaid, it was like, obviously you're ashamed of something's going on here that we have to like talk about.
Yeah. I mean, that's dishonest. But I think in a way, I mean, I don't know if this is how this, like, I feel like emotional cheating is actually far more serious than just physical cheating. But at the same time, physical cheating is always because of emotional stuff. It's not like, I mean, I think there are some men that just can't control themselves completely to the point where like, if any woman looks at them, sure, they're going to go for it. But it's normally there's a problem that's happening. I don't know what I said, but yeah.
No, I think you make total sense. Even as a woman, I mean, I'm open. I'll just be honest right now. I've cheated once in a relationship. I'm not like a serial cheater. I know people say like you cheat once, you're always going to be a cheater. Definitely not true, because I cheated because there were issues in the relationship. And so like, that's why it happened. I mean, all the blame goes on me. I'm not saying it was like his fault, but yeah, I mean, there's always a reason behind like the physical cheating, I think, for the most part.
That sounds like, I mean, yeah, of course, like it's basically like you can't make a mistake. And if you make one mistake, that defines you. And that's what that's what it sounds like. Oh, if you cheated once, you can do. It's just like, I could cheat no matter if I've never cheated before. I have the same possibility. Basically, it's like everyone has the capacity to do it. I think they just like want it to be obvious. Like, oh, if you've done it once, that means something.
Then that means every single time and that's just not the case. Like, we're more complex individuals than that, I think. I mean, maybe for some people that's true. Like, they just don't care and they just do it all the time. But in general, I don't think that's a fair assumption.
I agree. I would love to know the sort of the opposite scenario where it was a guy, I guess, coming on to you, or my guess is he didn't bide his time as well as you did. That's my guess.
Okay. Well, there's a couple scenarios. I mean, there have definitely been a few friendships in my life where I thought that we were just friends. And then like all of a sudden this like love confession came out of nowhere. Like one time in college, it was like my friend's boyfriend. And I was like, back up, buddy. Absolutely not. Like, never. And then there have been other circumstances where like friends of mine have like said, you know, I have feelings for you. Is this going anywhere? And I've had to turn them down because it hasn't. And sometimes that's gone well. And sometimes that hasn't gone well. And sometimes we remain friends. And sometimes all of a sudden they decided I'm not such a great friend for them, I guess, because they had ulterior motives. But the big one in high school, I was dating somebody for like a year. His good friend was actually my best friend, and he ended up falling for me, and he actually did bide his time pretty well. Like he definitely was like the person, like I would vent to him and he would definitely tell me to like break up with my boyfriend. He'd be like, you should just end it. Like, he's not a good guy. He's not a good guy. But in all fairness, like he wasn't a good guy, the guy I was dating. So it's okay, I guess. But yeah, we were best friends for like, maybe 3 years before we started dating. And then finally I was like, what am I doing? I am completely with the wrong person. And then we ended up dating, and we dated for like 3 years. And even after we broke up, we stayed really good friends. So that was kind of the other side. He like waited for me to kind of like get there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so like, it's hard because obviously there's not like a rule. And I think that's something that it's something that in therapy comes up a lot for me of like, oh, I see the world sometimes in black and white and like, oh, there's got to be like a way that this is obvious. But obviously so many marriages and true love or whatever, I'm putting that in quotes, starts from friendship. And in a way, a lot of people recommend that as step one, sort of like, or like it's works for so many people. So it's sort of like, there isn't, that's what makes it confusing, right? It's like, so, but the thing is, it's obviously takes two people. And I think that was where I struggled. Like I was the guy who totally I don't think I was ever an intentional, like I would write the love confession note, right? Or something like, and nothing would come of it, but like also nothing would, like I wasn't said no. It was sort of like, it was, I think, just too much to handle from, like, oh, I don't know what to say to this. And I sort of was like, oh, I guess I still have hope, sort of a thing. Or I would, it was sort of the biding my time thing, but I was totally, I was just blind to the fact that like, I think in a lot of scenarios for me, I think I mixed up, like, I thought maybe it was, because my feelings were so intense. I thought, A, that it was reciprocated, but B, that like their hesitancy wasn't because they weren't into me. It was because they were afraid of commitment. Right. And it was sort of like, and it was mostly, all this is because of communication was poor. Right. Like,
of course.
So,
of course. Yeah. I think you're right. I think first of all, I think it's just so like individualistic. Like, can men and women be like friends and just be friends? Of course we can, but it just depends on the two individuals as people. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It depends on like each specific pairing. I have so many friends who have never been into me and I've never been into them, and that will never be a thing. And that's totally fine. And then there are totally different circumstances, obviously, as well. But I think also, to your point, we do a lot of like mental gymnastics when we like someone. We're like, oh, maybe they like me too. Maybe this is the process. Maybe they're just too afraid to admit their feelings, or like, or something like that.
Yeah. Or they just need more time, right? Like,
exactly.
If I'm just Andy for 3 more months, then
they'll wake up one day, this is a teen movie, and they'll be like, and I guess that did happen to me. So I guess it does happen sometimes. I was like, I'm never going to be into like my best friend. We're just best friends. Like, I'm dating this other guy. And then I literally woke up one day and was like, what am I doing? I am in love with a totally different person than I thought I was. And it just like switched. So you just never know. You never know what's going to happen, I guess.
I can't help but now think about Dawson's Creek in that scenario, because like it makes me think of Dawson, right? Where it really was like this switch, because like he was oblivious to Joey, who was just in love with Dawson. And it was so obvious throughout, from the beginning. And then Dawson has that light bulb moment when she's like in a beauty contest, which I always felt was like, oh, okay, when she's hot, like you're in.
Didn't love that, but yeah.
I don't actually know if I have a point. I just wanted to bring up Dawson's Creek.
I think that it's relatable. Dawson and Joey in general are essentially, there was definitely like something that happened for me too. And it wasn't a fashion show or a beauty contest. He didn't like come out like looking all smoking. And I was like, ooh, it was something different than that, where I was like, he understands me in a different way. And why am I with this other person? It doesn't even make any sense. I think I'm just like fighting myself for some reason. I don't know. Maybe I was like afraid to get hurt or something, but yeah, so it does happen like that. I think it happens in all different ways. So it's such a complex conversation to have, which is why we're
right. Well, in that scenario, like you sort of had the ingredients of both. You're like, you were with the bad guy, and then
the
guy was sort of there.
Yeah.
He was a bad guy. Sorry, I put him in quotes, but he deserves.
No, he deserves it.
Okay, bad guy in all caps. Fuck that guy. That's where we're at. Let's see.
He grew out of it. It's okay. But back then, not a good guy. And then, I had the other good guy. And then,
Were there any like scenarios where, you said that you've been friends with exes and then friends without. Yeah. Because I actually did ask my wife on that point. She thought that like once you've had sex, it's really hard to like have a legitimate friendship after that, or like that it's sort of the possibility exists forever. I don't know. I mean, I might have been rewording that improperly, so hopefully she shouldn't get at me at that. But anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think your wife has a really good point. I think that sex definitely opens a window that is hard to close afterwards. But at the same time, I found personally trying to be friends with exes like immediately after relationships end is a very complicated and sometimes horrible idea, because there are still so many messy feelings and lingering things and, oh, I'm lonely, I'm going to go to this person, that kind of thing. So I think that's an issue. But once there's been sort of some time to breathe, I've at least found for me, where you've kind of passed all that and you truly have moved on, but you have to like make sure like you're not lying to yourself like, oh yeah, I'm totally over it, but really you're not over it. And that takes a lot of like,
how do you know, by the way? I'm just asking, like, how do you know when you've completely moved on?
Okay, this is going to sound so woo-woo or whatever, but I remember my worst heartbreak. I was so sad. And this girl said to me, she was like, just think one day you're going to wake up and he's not going to be the first person or first thing you think about. He's going to be the second thing. And then he's going to be the third thing. And then one day you're going to go a whole day without thinking about him at all. And I realized that like when I start living my life where they're not on my mind, like constantly or consistently in that sort of way, I know that I've like let go and moved on. There might always be like some sort of love for them, of course, because you've shared something special, especially in like really serious relationships. But I think you can detach and become really good friends. I'm friends with all my exes with the exception of one, which like he's just like a garbage person. So he doesn't deserve my friendship. But any other ex I've ever dated could call me up and I could call them and they'd be there for me and vice versa. So.
Damn. I'm just impressed. Very healthy relationships. I don't know.
Not to say it hasn't been a messy, again, trial and error situation. Like, as I said, when you try and be friends too quickly, that can cause like a lot of, did we make a mistake questions? And then you're like in this pseudo relation, there's a lot of, right. I think it is possible.
Yeah. In that zone, it's more of like, you're both afraid to be alone and you sort of want the company of the person without the label anymore, or sort of, you're just afraid to actually act on the decision you made that you know is right. And that makes sense.
Yeah.
Are there friends that you have? Well, I mean, actually this question is answered based on that you're friends with people that you've, been in relationships with. So of course you are attracted to them. At least you were, probably not in the same way or whatever, but I don't think that initial attraction goes away, right? Unless I guess, someone gains 200 pounds or, whatever it is. And that sounds very superficial, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't even think that would change it.
My total honest answer to that is it honestly depends on how the sex was. Like, to be totally, I don't like, sorry if that's too like frank or whatever, but I feel like a lot of times we get out of relationships and we think the sex was really good. And then we'll look back and we're like, actually wasn't really that good. I was just into that person and I wanted that person to think that I thought it was good and like make them happy. So I think that's a thing a lot of women have. So if it wasn't really, I'm like, I don't really need to go back to that. But then there are those occasions where like, if it was really great, then yeah, that attraction is probably always going to be there to some extent,
Right. But like, that doesn't necessarily, it sounds like that doesn't necessarily affect the friendship. Like, I'm assuming that statement applies to some of the people you just mentioned, like these exes, right? But it's just sort of, I guess it's not necessarily compartmentalized, but it's just like a thing. And it obviously sort of exists for the other guy too, right? He's like, oh yeah, I've had sex with Kat. And I'm sure he's not doing the same mental gymnastics about like, well, I was pretending how good that was. Like,
maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I have no idea. I don't want to speak for him.
No, I just think as you, again, get older, it changes. Like when I was a hormonal teenager, those things were a little bit different, but then when you get older, you can like compartmentalize, I think, and just like that, okay, yeah, but that was part of the past and that's not important anymore. Like our friendship is more important and you think with your head more, your brain, I should say.
No, I mean, we get it.
Yeah.
Was I going to correct? Oh, not the head. You think with your brain. Have you ever been confused about the nature of a friendship?
I mean, exactly how, like, are we friends? Are we more than friends kind of situation? Like, not sure where we stand kind of thing, or
Yeah.
not sure on my feelings. Okay. I want to say no, because I'm such an open person that I'm gonna like talk about it eventually. Like, especially when I was younger and I was like all about the drama, like wanting my life to be like a teen drama TV show, like the more drama, the better. So I was always going to be open about those things. So I feel like, no, I've never been confused on what like I am with someone. Like, I'm always going to communicate that because I feel like that's a better course of action.
Again, yeah, you're open and wise. I'm just like,
Thank you.
I think it's probably time for me to like sort of answer some of these questions or something.
Yeah,
So, because it is sort of more like an interview, but I guess I want to just speak to, I think, what, where my head is at or was at in terms of friends with women. Wasn't basically the idea of emotionally connecting with someone. That didn't often happen with men. And when it happened with women, that to me meant sex or I mean, that's a very vulgar way, I guess, of putting it, but like it meant like a physical relationship or like that would naturally follow. And this is the wise, now that I'm here saying it, like, I had no idea that was sort of what and I'm going to say programmed, because I feel like that it just felt like what was supposed to happen. It was like, oh, we're connecting emotionally. This is great. This is amazing. I don't have this with, my guy friends. That has to mean something, right? Like, and it didn't, like, other than women are better friends than men, or at least that's not a blanket statement. That's not always true, obviously. But in my experience, women are much more comfortable being emotional or talking about their feelings. And that was, I mean, especially as an 18-year-old who had no experience whatsoever in that, it was like a turn on, but also just, it felt like, oh, okay, this is a relationship, because this is different than any friendship I've had before. But of course I was thinking about it from my perspective always, and that I think is where I'm like, I would like to be, I live in being hard on myself and delivering shame and guilt about that. But now I'm like, I can see why I was there, and I'm glad I'm not there anymore, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's like a societal thing. I think that men are like, or I should say boys, because I think it starts like very young, are programmed that way. So that when, like, as you're growing up and all these things are happening, that's just kind of, it's like the male gaze, and you're just automatically thinking this is where this is going to go. And I've had a lot of boyfriends who have been uncomfortable with the fact that I've had guy friends while I've been in a relationship, because their perspective is, if you're friends with them, you're leading them on. They're automatically thinking that you are going to sleep with them, that you want more, etc. And I'm like, that's not necessarily the case. But sometimes that has been the case, and sometimes it hasn't been the case. But I mean, I would be lying if I said that sometimes my boyfriends were right in saying that, because guys do assume that sometimes. But I think that's just like what society, I don't know, I'm not a guy, so I can't speak for you or any of you, but has like taught y'all, or I don't know.
I mean, it's like you said, there's been, I think, a scenario where, I mean, I know, like, I was with someone and I knew that like one of her friends did like her, or something like that. And it's just like, that does feel uncomfortable, but at the same, but it also comes from like where I've been. Like I normally am that guy. Like, and so I know how that guy thinks. Or you just, and like the boyfriends you're talking about, you sort of assume that everyone is either like you or an asshole, and I think maybe it's not, or it's the same, like you're the asshole too. But I know even before I like asked out my wife, like she was a friend of my roommate at the time, and I went to him for permission, which sounds really weird, but it wasn't permission. It was just, I was making sure that he wasn't someone like me who had like been pining, biding his time, that actually liked her, because that would have been terrible. I didn't want that. And he sort of just laughed at me. And he's just like, no, that's like, that's not a thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, thank God. I think maybe I wanted, like, part of it is like wanting an excuse to like not be intimate or not to put yourself out there. So it's like, oh, okay, then I can, retreat perhaps, or like, yeah, I don't know. Did that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And then it's like, oh no, wait. Okay, now I have to actually maybe tell her how I feel because there's nothing standing in the way of us or whatever.
Right. And I was used to that. Or if there wasn't, I would create a reason. But
yeah. But how did it happen with your wife? Like, you said that you've been confused about how things were happening. Were you confused, or did you make it clear by that time in your life? Were you very open about like, hey, this is going to be a thing. Like, I like you. I'm into you.
With my wife, it was slightly different because I think learned from my mistakes. Well, I say that, but that's like, I don't think I was that much. Like, I think we did sort of we weren't friends for a long time before at all. We met at a party, and it was sort of like, we definitely had a connection, but also we were both drunk. And I've had that interaction multiple times, and I didn't want to repeat it, because I think if we had, I wouldn't be married to her right now, because it just would have been a hookup or whatever. And it was sort of, the first time like was just a random movie and we were friends. But then I think it was only like a month or two in of like a couple random hangouts, but it was, I don't know. It's hard because like, I feel like it was clear. And I said that even though we didn't communicate it, but I felt like, oh, okay, I can tell this is going both directions here. And in a way that, maybe I'd hoped in the past that was happening. But then I did do the conversation, like, cause I feel like I had, before I like went for a kiss on our, like, sort of, it was definitely a date, but like hadn't said it. I basically was like, hey, I have feelings for you. I just want to like make sure that's clear. Yeah. And then she was like sheepishly like, I like you too, sort of. And then it was, then it was like, oh, okay, now we're on the same page. And then we sort of went from there. But it definitely, the first time we went anywhere, I like charged her for the movie ticket because I was it was such a random thing that it wasn't like actually, it was through a friend of mine that invited her to the movie to take a place of someone else. So I didn't like, it wasn't a date in my mind, and I didn't want to, I don't know. I wanted that $12.
I needed that money. Okay.
I'm so cheap. I get shit for that often. So
as you should.
But clearly I did something right. Yeah. No, it was ridiculous. Even if it was just a random person that I never saw again, like why I was asking for money at that point was stupid. But I didn't have any. So, but this has even like come up with like, and by this, I mean sort of the opposite sex friendship thing. It's slightly different with therapists, of course, because they're not necessarily your friends, but I've had two therapists. Both of them were my age, basically, and attractive. I found them attractive, and that gets confusing too, because obviously that is all you're doing is being emotionally, honest and connecting, even though, and I had no illusions like, oh, this person's into me, but it's just like, why is that where my brain has to fucking go? Like, I don't want to be attracted to, this therapist or this therapist. And the first one, I never mentioned it. The second one, like we had like a really good session, and then I basically imagined torpedoing it. I was like, what could I destroy this? How could I destroy it? So I imagined us having sex, and that not only would that ruin my therapist, but like ruin my relationship with my wife, like all these different things. And I just like, I went the next session, I told her that, and she's just like, that's normal, like, it's sort of a self-destructive sort of, personality. And that's something where I am used to. I have grown beyond it for the most part, but yeah, it's obviously, it does get confusing, and there's so many different, that's why whenever I see a therapist fall in love with someone in a movie or TV show, I'm like, ooh, that's never okay. I think Better Things had something where everyone was loving like Matthew Broderick and, the main character, Sam, and I never actually watched it, but I was like, that can't be okay. Like, that's just the power dynamic is too
really messed up when you think about it. Yeah.
I think, well, actually, I guess it sort of brings us to, I think this is the slightly awkward thing, but like, I am attracted to you, right? And that is awkward and weird, I think, because it's like, I don't want that. Does that sound like, it's just sort of like, I just want us to be friends. And I was really excited about that. But it's like, why does I obviously have no control over that, right? But like, where I have no idea. Do you have, like, no, that's not the question I'm asking. Let's rewind. How did we meet, Kat?
How did we meet?
Do you remember? You tweeted
Twitter. There was Twitter.
You tweeted that you wanted to marry me.
That's right. I did.
Right.
Because of your Gossip Guys podcast.
Yeah, because of the podcast. And I remember the first thing I did was show it to Lily to make her jealous. It didn't work.
Good.
But also I knew it wasn't literal, right? It's just sort of like it's a compliment. It's like, oh, Kat's a fan. This person's a fan. And also I was like, oh, I need to like get a good response to this person. But then that led to us meeting and like learning that you love Dawson's Creek like as much as me. You have a Dawson's Creek podcast. I was on it. And then that sort of all these different things / that marriage thing that gets into my head sometimes too. I'm like, oh, she's into me. And I'm like, wait, what? Why? Like, why am I thinking that? And I know that's not even true. Like, it's just that's male brain that I wish I could break,
Yeah. That's just where your brain automatically goes. I think then if it starts with a tweet, especially like that, then I understand why you would automatically go there. And so it makes sense to me that's why. But I'm glad your wife wasn't jealous. I was just really happy to be listening to a podcast about Gossip Girl and like you and Aaron, and he's like loving Chuck, and you're like just shredding him and being like, no, like this is terrible, it's misogynistic, it's horrible. And I'm like, yes, like a guy who understands like how men should be kind of thing. And so that was like, I like this guy, he's cool. And that's, it kind of built on from there.
Right. And but then it's like sort of you're saying that and it's just like it feels like I'm somehow misogynist when even though it's not the same definition, but it's just like, wait, why does it just go back to superficial like, oh, I'm attracted to this new person that's in my life? And I think it is the same thing, that same instinct after therapy, right? Of like, oh, how do I destroy my life? But again, it's also like not thinking of you as a person. Like, it's like, it's just, and that was, I think why I wanted to do this podcast was like to try and, well, explore this because I thought it was important. And I could tell that you, like, this isn't scaring you, or this isn't like even surprising you or whatever. But it's also sort of like your game because I think you understand why I am trying to put myself out there and like sometimes it is like, oh, I just want to be like prosecute myself. But I think in this, it really was just like explore these feelings and like what is it? Doesn't actually mean anything.
Yeah. I mean, no, I agree. And I think that when you take a step back and you think about it, and I sound like a therapist here, but it's like, if you're processing it all that way and you're thinking about it that way, then that obviously means that it's not anything to worry about, right? Because I'm sure that there
I
are
like that
men,
you're telling me you're being the best friend ever right now.
Well, see, like,
no, sorry, keep going.
Men and women can be friends. No, but it's like there are men and women out there who that would not be like a concern for them. Like they would take maybe those thoughts and go a totally bad, negative way about it. But it's like the fact that you're breaking it down obviously means that it's not actually anything that is a problem. You know what I mean? Like you obviously are very head over heels in love with your wife, and you're just trying to break down against the things that you've been conditioned to assume just because of how our society is cultured, I feel like, essentially.
I think, thank you. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. But I think it's also sort of goes back to the same thing where like, even in the span of like us emailing back and forth during this, that was emotional connection for me. And I think the same for you. And I was 100%. Like, and again, that goes back to what I'm used to, right? It goes back to like, oh, that means something else. And I'm like, wait, no. But it's like that sort of whatever negative man voice, the opposite of of who I want to be.
I agree. I mean, and I don't think I've ever like like I've said 5 times now, I have a bunch of, good platonic guy friends, but I don't think I've ever met anyone the way that we've met, like through like totally random circumstances. Like you were on some podcasts with people that I'm actually friends with, like in real life, like the shipping room and stuff like that. So, Christine and all those people. So,
Oh, you're friends with them in real life?
Yeah, well, I mean, like we write for the same outlet, and we're friends. We talk like on the regular kind of thing. So I already knew them going in. So it wasn't like completely out of the blue, like there you are, but still it was like a Twitter thing. And yeah, I've never been on sort of that situation. So I definitely am like, well, how good of friends am I allowed to be with this person? Because my brain goes to, like, when we were emailing even, I was like, should I give him my number to text, or is it weird? Like if I want to send like a Pacey Witter Dawson's Creek GIF or something, would that be weird to text someone who's married when I don't know their wife and their wife doesn't know me? So like, who knows who I could be? I could just, like I could be a terrible person and out for the wrong thing. So those are the kinds of things that were going on in my brain, I guess.
Thank you. Cause I was going to ask that. Cause I was like, God, it's too much me. Well, we'll have to get my wife and you to meet.
Please, but, I would love that.
Yeah. Cause she's in the middle of season 3 of Dawson's Creek. So there's a thing to talk about right now.
The money pot season. Yes.
But yeah, I was going to ask so your mental gymnastics was more, I mean, it was mine were all sort of about myself. And then yours were very much like being considerate for my wife and the situation and being like, but at the same time, I think I was saving this conversation for this, right? And it was like, but also I guess you were saving that for this too, right? You could have like asked that, but that would be probably weird, right? Like, am I allowed to, I know you said when I was like, hey, what's your phone number? Like, this is easier than stupid direct messages. I don't like doing that. So yeah, your main concern was just like overstepping or like how good of friends are we allowed to be? And I think that's maybe where I'm at too, right? Like it sort of feels like, wait, how good of friends can I be?
Right. Yeah. Cause this isn't like my wife's friend or like, you're not my friend's husband kind of thing. Cause I think that's like different. But it's like, we're essentially strangers and your wife is a stranger to me. So it's just like new territory. How do you go about that, and have it be like a respectful thing? And I don't know. That's definitely where I was at.
Yeah. Well, and same here. And that's sort of why, that also is what drew me to the situation. Cause I was like, yeah, why are all of my female friends, the wife of my, guy friends or the girlfriend or, and they're always sort of, it's never, I knew them first. It was always, they're sort of the plus one in that relationship, even, in the friendship, obviously they're bigger in their lives. So I was just like, that excited me. I was like, it was a conscious decision of like, no, I want to be friends with Kat, not because of any sort of, I guess friends of friend bullshit or circumstances. Yeah. It's more like, oh, this person is cool. We have way too much in common.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think, I feel like in a way, before we even started recording, my goal was really just to be your friend. And then it's like, oh, this is now, this is sort of, I guess, weird evidence. It's like a yearbook photo of us at this point. Like, I don't know.
Look how far we've come.
I feel like we're sort of nearing the end here. I just want to, what do you need from me out of a friendship? How can I be a good friend to you?
That's such a good question. Oh my goodness.
I've never, by the way, that's a really hard question. I've never asked that to anyone. And I'm just like, I might cut this, but,
no, I love that question. I'm, like, what is a good friend to me? To me, it's like, I guess it's someone who, for one, and this goes across the board, like female, male, it does not matter. Like someone who puts in the same amount of effort as you, obviously, in a friendship. And I like when people like reach out, and I'm not always the person that has to put in the effort in the friendship. I think that is something that keeps me invested. And then obviously feeling like it's a comfortable, safe space to talk about things because I am a really open individual. So, I like to have that comfortability with someone. And then just like trying to remember things about each other, I think is an important part of friendship as well. Like if I have to tell someone like 12 times something about myself, I'm like, okay, how much is this person actually ingesting when we're having like conversations? So yeah, that's what I look for in my friendships. Just like people who care, basically. Like if you care about me, like I care about you.
That's like simple, but I feel like it's really hard because I think so many people are, or I think a lot of people care, but maybe are afraid to show it. It's like they're too cool to like actually show that. Or I think it's actually funny you say that because I think a lot about sort of the investment or like how much effort I put in. And I think a lot of times in my life, I've been sort of the guy who does 80 and like, I'm happy with that 20. But then I think in the last few years, I've been like, no, I want, and not that it needs to be 50-50 or whatever, but I want to feel like, oh, it's not just me being the one reaching out, me, the one remembering something. Cause that feels shitty.
100%. I'm like, are we even friends? So yeah, that's definitely an important thing for me. What about you? What do you want? How can I be a good friend to you?
Let's see. I mean, I think you've already sort of, one thing is like that I do struggle with is sort of having friends outside of the sort of creative writing thing too. Cause it feels like, oh, if I'm not doing that, I'm being naughty, I guess, but we've already talked off podcast about like, oh, we're both writers and like, let's do that. Let's, bounce ideas off. Cause I think I value your perspective and that, for sure I look forward to, and want, terms of that. I don't know. I think, I guess I want to help. And that's like, normally it's more like, I just need to listen. So like but it's like my response is like, oh, I just like want to help you. That's how I want to be a good friend. Cause that feels good.
It does. I love that feeling of being there for someone. It's a good feeling. So
I can be the, well, it sounds like you have a bunch of guy friends that you could pick the guy brain for, but I can be that guy. But yeah, I guess help with my social media.
Perfect. I can help with your social media. And then I'm totally single. So if I need to pick a guy's brain about like what's going on with that, I can go to you and be like, what's going on with this dude? Love it. Fair trade. Perfect.
I mean, I would love that podcast, just a relationship podcast of just,
I just come to you with
love
my
giving unsolicited
woes and you just tell me what I should do about them.
But don't listen. That's the thing. Don't let, yeah.
I don't know. You're married and I'm not. So I feel like maybe I should listen. We talk about how wise I am, but like you're the one that's in like this wonderful marriage and I am not. So maybe you know more than you think.
But that doesn't, well, I mean, that's probably true. I always underestimate myself. But also I think it's more, I mentioned this earlier. Like, I mean, I think that wasn't necessarily putting yourself down, but like, I feel like it's just, you haven't met the right person. And also you've had, like you said, a long life, which implies that you're like 73, but you're not. But like, I think it's just coming. Right. And I don't think that says I just got lucky, I think. And your luck is still to come. That's where I'm at. But Kat, this was a lot of fun.
This was fun. I hope we answered the questions that you wanted answered.
Oh, I think
I feel like we had like a relationship therapy talk more than anything, but
I mean, if you feel good and I feel good, that's all that matters.
I feel good.
Me too. I think I said it, earlier that like, I sort of want there to be, it be black and white or for there to be answers. And if each week I'm like, I open something up expecting an answer, then I will learn very quickly there isn't an answer or like one answer. So I think we did answer the questions I had, I think, or went to the places I want, but I wasn't like, hopefully this resonates with people in some way and they can take it and be like, apply it in their life. And also like maybe not be the biding the time guy in the bad sense, or I don't know. I think that was all I wanted, is just to like, explore it.
If anything, and I think you said this earlier, like hopefully this teaches people like communication is very important. Like if people communicated more about their feelings, I think a lot of issues would be solved. But yeah, and it's not black and white. It's so complex. Like it's two individuals, can men and women be friends? Absolutely. Should they be friends? Absolutely. But it's going to be a different story being told with every friendship or relationship you step into, I think.
I think that's the perfect way to end. I look forward to the next chapter of our story as friends.
Me too.
This episode was inspired by the following passage written by Alara J. Rogers.
Men are known to, on average, rely entirely on their female romantic partner for emotional support. Bonding with other men is done at a more superficial level, involving fun group activities and conversations about general subjects, but rarely involves actually leaning on other men or being really honest about emotional problems. Men use alcohol to be able to lower their inhibitions enough to expose themselves emotionally to other men, but if you can't get emotional support unless you're drunk, you have a problem. So men need to have a woman in their lives to have anyone they can share their emotional needs and vulnerabilities with. However, since women are not socialized to fear sharing these things, women's friendships with other women are heavily based on emotional support. If you can't lean on her when you're weak, she's not your friend. To women, what friendship is someone who listens to all your problems and keeps you company. So this disconnect men are suffering from is that they think only a person who is having sex with you will share their emotions or expect support. That's what a romantic partner does. But women think that's what a friend does. So women do it for their romantic partners and their friends and expect a male friend to do it for them the same as a female friend would. This fools the male friend into thinking there must be something romantic when there's not. Women have a much healthier approach to emotional support. They don't die when widowed at nearly the rate that widowers die, and they don't suffer emotionally from divorce nearly as much, even though they suffer much more financially. This is because women don't put all their emotional needs on one person. Women have a support network of other women, but men are trained to never share their emotions except with their wife or girlfriend, because that isn't manly. So when she dies or leaves them, they have no one to turn to help with the grief, causing higher rates of death, depression, alcoholism, and general awfulness upon losing a romantic partner. So men suffer terribly, but women suffer in that they can't reach out to male friends for basic friendship. I'm not sure any man can comprehend how heartbreaking it is to realize that a guy you thought was your friend was really just trying to get into your pants. Knowing that your friend was secretly seething with resentment when you were opening up to him and sharing your problems because he felt like he shouldn't have to do that kind of emotional work for anyone not having sex with him, and he felt used by you for that reason, is horrible. And the fact that men can't share emotional needs with other men means that lots of men who can't get a girlfriend end up turning into horrible misogynistic people who think the world owes them the love of a woman, like it's a commodity. The only way to fix this is to teach boys it's okay to love your friends. It's okay to share your needs and your problems with your friends. It's okay to lean on your friends, to hug your friends, to be weak with your friends. Only if this is okay for boys to do with their male friends can this problem be resolved. So men, this one's on you. Fix your own shit and teach your brothers and sons and friends that this is okay, or everyone suffers.
I'm so grateful to Kat for joining me and trusting me, and to you all for listening to our conversation. You can find the soundtrack of Kat's life and all others on the Naked Man Spotify page. You can follow Kat's story on Twitter at @Kat_Writes and on Instagram @_CatWrites. Please rate and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tell all your friends and exes. If you want to join our community, follow us on Twitter and Instagram @NakedManPod, and don't hesitate to reach out to us at nakedmanpod@gmail.com. Or, even better, you can call the all-new Naked Man phone line at 747-231-7120. Leave us your thoughts and feelings. If they move me, I'll bring them up on the pod. Next week, I have on my first LA friend, a true original, Matt Chamberlain, to discuss our difficulties with emotions, displaying toughness, and machismo culture. In the meantime, as my dad always says, be sweet. This episode of the Naked Man Podcast was conceived by Andy Green in collaboration with Kat Pettibone. The monologue was written by Alara J. Rogers and performed by Kat Pettibone. The Naked Man is a podcast hosted, created, and produced by me, Andy Green. The theme music was composed by Robert Panico, and all graphics were created by Christopher Miles. You're the best.